Welcome to a bonus edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Ian Cameron, and this is just a bonus edition of the show. We decided, so we could get our guest on at a time that fit his schedule. We'll have our regular shows later in the week. We'll bring Philip Nelson back on to talk about the divisional round. Rob Vino will join me for a show. We'll see if my CFL quarterback pals, Davis Alexander and Trevor Harris, are around to talk a little NFL playoffs later on in the postseason. But here on this special edition of the show, we've got ourselves former college and NFL running back joining us for a discussion about his football background and career, what he's doing right now. And we're going to talk a lot of NFL playoffs, what we saw on Wild Card Weekend, and looking ahead to the divisional round. Happy to have Zach Zenner joining us here on this edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Zach, great to have you on the show. How are you? Things good?
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, doing well. Glad this worked. Good to be on.
No doubt. So Eagan, Minnesota, where you grew up. I know you were a two-sport athlete in high school because you played a little baseball as well as, but primarily football. You had a great run in high school. You end up going to South Dakota State. How did you end up becoming a Jackrabbit?
So in my junior year of high school, I was reaching out to teams to play football. They were not reaching out to me. So that meant I was reaching out to a lot of Division III programs, all Division III programs, sending my transcripts. I applied to places like Luther College in Iowa and Carleton College, McAllister, a lot of Division III programs in the area. And they're great programs, good education at those schools as well. Senior year rolls around and our starting quarterback got hurt and they moved me to quarterback. So I had been playing a slot, getting 2 or 3 handoffs a game, running routes mainly. Then all of a sudden I'm playing quarterback in an option offense, getting to touch the ball every play. And I started getting calls from Division II programs in the area, St. Cloud State, which is no longer has a program, Augustana Mankato. Received a walk-on opportunity at North Dakota State to play linebacker, and South Dakota State was my only Division I offer, scholarship offer, and it was to play running back. So I took that and headed out to Brookings to a team I had never heard of. Despite only being 4 hours away, I'd never heard of the Jackrabbits. Was never a major
You didn't know your
college
FCS
football
football
fan.
back then, huh?
No, I didn't. Well, I only knew about the Gophers, and to be honest, I didn't really pay that close attention to them either. I was just doing my thing in high school, and well, I was always an NFL fan, but I wasn't always a college football fan until I got into it myself. So yeah, went to South Dakota State and played underneath Coach Stig, who was there for a long time, and was proud of the success we had while I was there.
No doubt. And to do a little trip down memory lane here for our guy Zach Zenner here on the show. But one of your breakout moments maybe was this moment here against the Kansas Jayhawks. Here it is on the screen right now. 1 yard line, handoff inside, and then just busts it, just right to the end zone, right to the house call for Zach, 99 yards. What was it like that moment there, scoring that big 99-yard scamper for a touchdown?
That was pretty awesome. I mean, we lost the game, so it wasn't enough. And believe it or not, that was actually 99.5 yards because we were on the 1 yard line and tried to jump,
That's
catch
important
them
to point that
offsides.
out. Don't let them take that half yard away from you.
Right.
A little bit
So
counts.
we tried to have them jump off sides and we didn't. We jumped off sides ourselves. We false started. So they walked us back a little bit. But that was really special for a couple reasons. One, that was my first, I don't know if it was my first start, but this was week 1 of my sophomore year and I was the starter. And this was my first start where I was like, I'm the starter, right? There was no plans to rotate. We did rotate a couple other players in, but in general, this was my first game where it was really going to be on me to be the running back. So really a special sort of breakout play to start my career. I had the previous year, which was my redshirt freshman year, I had split carries with Tyrell Cool, who's playing receiver on this snap.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure a great memory. And this was, and as you mentioned, this was really in the early part of your run there in college, correct?
Yeah, that was sophomore year, 2012. That was the first true start. I mean, you can tell too, though, the offensive line did a great job, created that massive gap, had a good play call on the same side power scheme there, and just had to be fast enough.
No doubt, no doubt. So once college ended, at the moment college ended for you, what was your thinking, your prospects, your anticipation at the time as far as a pro career? Were you thinking as high as NFL right away, or was that something that you were still skeptical? Would I be able to get there?
Always just was working to maximize myself and take advantage of whatever opportunity I had. I certainly knew I wanted to play in the NFL. It had always been a dream of mine. So I was going to pursue that and essentially see where the chips fell. I'd also gotten accepted to medical school at that time. So I got accepted to medical school in December of 2014. And then that early 2015 was my draft process training, the NFL combine, that sort of thing. So the thought process was, hey, I'm going to give everything I got to the NFL. And then if that doesn't work out, I'll go to medical school next year.
And of course, 2015 NFL draft, you not drafted, but signed as an undrafted free agent by the Detroit Lions. And now we'll talk about the Lions experience, but because that was the NFL team let's be honest, that was your team. I know you had a couple cups of coffee after that with a
Yeah.
couple of teams, but Detroit's essentially your team. Now that you're not playing football, is that the team you cheer for now, the Detroit Lions? Has that become the NFL team you kind of root for? I know there's probably some of you now in the postseason rooting for the Rams because of Matthew Stafford. And of course, you were in the huddle with him for a few years there
Right.
in Detroit. But does that make you a Lion and a Lion fan now? Your time there?
Absolutely, yes. I'm a Lions fan. I actually, just unfortunate timing on a podcast day, wore some Cardinals gear. I was there with them
You
for
got the
six
wrong team
weeks,
on. Yeah.
but definitely a Lions fan, and then just a fan of the players, like you said. A huge fan of Matthew, and Prater is back in the league, so I enjoyed watching him kick for the
For
Bills
Buffalo, yeah.
yesterday
Right.
afternoon. Yeah, so
He was kicking
anyone
for
that
Detroit
I
back then.
played with.
True. Yep.
Yeah, anyone that I played with, I'm a fan of, but mainly a fan of the Detroit Lions. I'm also now a fan of the teams that my clients are employed by. So
Yeah.
we'll get into it more, but after my career, decided medical school wasn't the right path for me. Decided I knew a lot about health and wellness and optimizing my body. I knew a lot about football. I liked coaching and mentoring others. So I decided to become an NFL agent where I could scratch that football itch and a nutritionist where I could scratch that health and wellness itch. So I'm also now a fan of the teams that employ my clients, which is darn near about getting close to half the NFL.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty good. That's no surprise. I mean, I know hockey agents, I know a couple basketball agents, and they're always they're like the biggest. They're the president of the fan club, of every client, every player that's under their
Yeah.
watch. So that's no surprise at all to hear that you feel that exact same way about the clients, the players, obviously, that you work with. We are just we're the professional tire pumpers here today for Zach Zenner because we got another highlight reel that we're going to play with him here, especially as far as his Detroit Lions time. But just that experience, I know that was probably back in the days where the, maybe Abdullah was with them at the time. As
Yeah.
far as
So Amir and I are good friends.
yeah,
Amir was drafted in the second round the same year I was brought in as an undrafted free agent.
wow, that's so there you go. So and you've remained friends definitely from that point on. But you were with Detroit at a time where obviously Detroit's had a rough go until Dan Campbell arrived on the scene. But I do think they had a year or two there where they were in the play with Caldwell, wasn't it, Jim? I'm trying to think. Were
Yeah.
you on that team when Caldwell was there?
I was. Yeah,
There you go.
so the
I haven't lost it
2014
just yet.
so 20 I don't remember when Caldwell got there, but the year before I was there was the year where they had that dominant defense. It was 2014, and they had I can't remember if it was the call or the no call where against the Cowboys in the playoffs. Hey, Cowboys, you're pulling up a Cowboys clip right now. But against Des
It's a
Bryant.
huge game for
No, it
you,
was
man. Unbelievable game you had there. Tremendous. You had 2 touchdowns in this game.
yeah, well, this wasn't that I'm referring to, but the year before I was there, they had a no call interference, I think on Brandon Pettigrew, that
Right.
would have changed the course, the outcome of the game. And they ended up losing in the first round of the playoffs. Then 2015, my rookie year. So this, what we're watching is 2016. 2015 under Caldwell, I think they went 8. 7-9, but would have made the playoffs if Aaron Rodgers had not completed the Thursday Night Football Hail Mary that nearly hit the roof at Ford Field.
That's right.
So
Yep.
missed the playoffs in 15 because of that one play. In 16, which is what we're watching, a game from 16, we did make the playoffs. I actually started the playoff game at Seattle. We played the last year of the Legion of Boom, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Michael Bennett, Russell Wilson, that crew. We lost to them in the first round. And then 2017, we went 7-9, but would have made the playoffs again had the refs called the goal line play against the Falcons correctly. They called Golden Tate a touchdown, then went to review the play. They then overturned it and said he was on the inch yard line. But because we didn't have any timeouts and because it was a review, there was a 10-second runoff and the game was over. So we go, essentially, they make the playoffs. Then in 14, then 15, just barely miss. 16, we make the playoffs. 17, barely miss. And they fired him after the 17th season. And that's when Coach Patricia came in. So really, I don't really appreciate I understand the general sentiment of the Lions is, man, they sucked till Campbell got there. But we really had some decent years
I
in there under
remember.
Coach
That's why I
Caldwell.
brought it up, Zach. Let's not act like
Yeah,
it's been complete, utter horseshit from the 90s
right.
until the last couple of years with Dan Campbell. There were a couple of good years in there and playoff years
Yeah.
with Caldwell and when you were on that team, the Lions. Yep.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think I'll always die on that hill for the rest of my life. That, oh, the Lions suck till Campbell. No,
No.
definitely not.
No, how about those Zach Zenner teams and then the way he played and look at the way they played. And also
Wasn't
make it
about,
sound like you were the big component as to why too.
yeah, I was not a huge, I was a cog in the wheel for sure, but I was not the wheel itself, right? We had a lot of talented players on the team. Golden Tate was one of them. Ziggy Ansah, Quandre Diggs, Darius Slay,
Yep.
Matt Prater. We had a lot of good players on that team.
And
Jalen
apparently, because he's
Reeves-Maybin
been so
was
great in
on
his
those
career,
teams.
the Buffalo Bills call him because they need him
Yeah,
after Tyler Bass got injured. And look at him now with the Bills.
yeah, yes. Prater's a different guy for sure, as all kickers are. But really enjoyed having him as a teammate, and love seeing him have continued success.
Yeah, that was. Would you say that? And we'll run the highlight here one more time. We just played it a minute ago, but here it is. That game you had against Dallas, 2016, your second season there. The 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fair to say that was your best game in the NFL? Was there one better?
The game at the Packers in 2018, that was pretty solid as well. We were moving the ball well on the ground that game too. Those would probably be the top two.
Is it just me, or is Matt Stafford not really aged too much? Like you see him in this video
He
highlight.
like
Yeah.
he looks the same in this as 9 years
There's
ago
a
as he
couple
or 10
grays
years
in
ago.
that beard of his, but other than that, like face wise, like it's just doesn't look like he's aged all that much at all.
But if you go back to his rookie thing, so he's taking care of his body at this time now, and that's why he's had such longevity, is because of the work he's done
Yeah.
on his body and then a training room and all that. But if you go back to his rookie year, he's got a lot of extra weight around the face and a little around the belly as well. Came in, I think he might have gained the freshman 15 and never lost it till his third year in the NFL.
And Matthew Stafford, of course, still rocking it and doing his thing, of course, in the playoffs with the Rams. We'll certainly get to some NFL in just a moment. But as you can see, Zach Zenner, one of the great games he had in the NFL with the Lions and against Dallas in 2016. One thing about you and your running style, nothing fancy schmancy, no fancy schmancy pants with Zach Zenner's running style, just straight line, just get downhill, physical, hard, tough running style, and just try to run people over. And look, you were a big guy. Look at that physique of yours back then.
Now,
Not
as
that
an
it's bad
agent,
now.
now as an agent, I've chatted with scouts who scouted me out of college and knew about me while I was in the NFL. And I love one of the scouting reports someone had on me out of college, which was all yards, no flash. And I think that's summarizes my running style well.
Yeah, north south, not east west. That's Zach Zenner's style right there.
Yeah. And that's my
So
strength too. That's what I was good at. I didn't have the most wiggle, right? Especially when you at an NFL level. I had enough to be effective, but my specialty was getting up and down the field.
see what I would say is not that the Lions terminated their relationship in I think 2019 it was with Zach. I'm going to say Zach saw the ship starting to sink and said, "I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm going to rewrite the story and say that's how it went down." How about that?
It's funny. I would have loved to have stayed there and played with those guys. It was certainly a tough environment. Coach Patricia was created an environment that was it was just a tough on the players type of coach. That was his style, right? And that some days that bothered me, other days it didn't. I would have loved to have continued to play there and play another 2 or 3 years there, but ultimately I got released, and it was because my play was starting to decline. I was not performing at my typical level because of injuries that started to catch up with me, and you see that a lot. It's really hard for a running back to play over 5 years. Any running back that plays longer than 5 years is extremely impressive and has likely invested a ton of money and time in their body. I found a lot of those resources just a little bit too late. But I think even from a health performance standpoint, I was when I started in the NFL, only about 1/3 of NFL teams had a nutritionist on staff. So this wave of other treatments and therapies to help players stay on the field really was just starting while I was in the NFL. And who knows if I'd been a couple years younger, I maybe would have gotten to play a few more with the new technologies that are out now.
So it's not just, hey, well, the door's closed because of something I did or didn't do specifically. It's just that maybe the wave of, just player recovery, player treatment, and maxing out how you put yourself in the best spot from a health perspective, to maintain longevity in your football career. You were not exposed to some of those tools because they didn't come around as much at the time you were playing, correct?
Or that's certainly contributed, but who knows, right? I mean, maybe even with in that alternate universe, maybe even then I still only play 5 years because of the way my career went too. 2020, remember, was COVID. So 2019 to not be on a team to end 2019 was really
That's an
tough.
excellent point because then when the
If I'd
NFL
been on a
resumes
team,
after COVID, it's already
yeah,
hard enough to try to, maintain the roster. And then they're going to more look at people that were actually active on teams probably pre COVID. That was not the case for you. And it probably puts you behind the eight ball, right?
it's really tough. Yeah, this if I had been on a team, say to end the 2019 season, and then would have been on that team in the spring, all while that COVID stuff was happening, right? That would have been I probably would have scratched out a 6 year in the NFL.
No doubt. And obviously, despite the playing days finishing for you after 2019 professionally, you decided, hey, where are we going to go now with life after football? And from what I understand, you're wearing a lot of hats right now: fitness training, nutritionist, player agent, doing a lot of stuff. So tell us about it.
That's the alluded to it earlier, but just became passionate about, or was always passionate about my own body and my own performance. And of course, always passionate about football. You have to be to play it at a high level for 10 years, 5 in college and 5 in the NFL. And recognized mainly that medical school wasn't the right path. I had done a lot of, I'd even retaken my MCAT, done a lot of stuff to set up that opportunity. Said, okay, I'm not going down that path. What do I know a lot about? What would people come and ask me about anyway? Well, people come and talk to me about football. They talk to me about performance. And so I decided, okay, that's what I want to, just go farther down that path and see what that's like. As I've always done, talked to a lot of people, prayed about it, and the farther I got into it, the more I liked it. That's when you know you're on the right path. So have loved it. Have loved it and enjoyed it. Help people, kind of anyone really, general population people, but my specialty is former athletes get more energy. So, and get more energy and get more consistent in their health and wellness. My superpower specialty is taking all this nutritional information this mass of information that's out there because it's not an information problem. But then distilling that down, saying, how do we apply this in your life? Because it's all been one-on-one coaching up to this point. How do we apply it in her life? How do we apply it in Ian's life so that he can be successful and he can stay consistent and consistently healthy to have long-term success and longevity? So that's on the health side. And then on the football side, it's coaching and mentoring others using my football wisdom and experience to help them have a career in the NFL. I just got back on Saturday. I was down in Dallas at the College Gridiron Showcase. And we prepped those guys before that game for on a 2-hour call saying, hey, here's what you got to focus on. Here's what we got to do. Here are what the pitfalls. Here's what to avoid. And I'm talking to the guys at the games like, dude, I felt so prepared because of what you guys talked to me about. I said, yes, exactly. That's why I'm doing this. And then I also have a lot of fun when those cross over. So we have NFL clients that will come to me with nutrition questions. Hey, what do you think about this supplement? What do you think about this or that? That's where it gets really fun. So really enjoying the path that God laid out in front of me and that I've decided to go down.
Oh, very cool. So the nutritionist role that you serve for everybody there, not just football players, just general public as well, and you'll basically tutor them as far as what steps they should be taking to maintain optimal health. And obviously, you've got the player agent thing. And I don't want to turn this into Ian Cameron's health and diet frenzy. It is Ian Cameron's football frenzy show after all. But I will say this: even I've tried to mind what I do lately as someone that just sits at a desk for most of the day like I am right now. It's important. You got to try to get out for a 30 to 60-minute walk most days. I know from a fact that the last, I would say, several months up to a year, I try to eat out of a fruit tray most days that you get at the grocery store. It's got strawberries and watermelon and melon and pineapple in it, and you just have a little bit of that each day, and that's certainly going to go a long way. Of course, that's the age old, to try to keep yourself healthy, eating well, feeling well, as fruits and vegetables, that being part of your diet. But that's so important. And there's steps I try to take. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to maintaining health, but certainly little things like that, the basics. Certainly, if you do that, you put yourself in a better spot.
Right. I think another basic that I would throw in the mix there with what you're talking about, because you're talking about a fruits and vegetable focus, talking about daily movement, those are excellent. I would throw in a focus on protein because protein is the number one
I hear
way
that
you're
P
going to
word all the
maintain your
time from
muscle.
the experts, the fitness experts,
Y-
the health
Yeah,
experts. Yep, not surprised
that's
to
how
hear
you're
that.
going to maintain your muscle mass. And once you have your muscle mass, then you're going to have less blood sugar problems. They're going to be able to move more. You're going to have more energy. This is where the protein comes into play. Also, protein is really difficult to overeat. It's really hard to eat, to munch on steak all day long, right? To like snack on, you can snack on chips all day long, but it's hard to just keep snacking on burgers and you feel more full in my experience. And that's partly because protein is going to be more unprocessed, right? Chips can have a lot of additives in it. Like Doritos, for example, are specifically formulated where you can eat a whole bag and don't feel like you ate anything. And it's going to be a lot harder to do that. Just something like chicken, steak, even tofu.
I'll raise my hand and say I'm guilty of eating a whole bag of Doritos before. I have 100%.
Who hasn't?
Yeah.
Because it's been specifically formulated. I even got a book in my closet here called The Dorito Effect, and they were, I think, one of the first to perfect it, where it's just the specific combination of ingredients, fat, protein, carbohydrates, that your brain doesn't pick up those signals that, hey, we just ate a lot of calories.
No doubt. By the way, obviously, Zach is on Twitter. I see he's on Instagram. He is getting into a lot of content, I believe. That's the plan, right? You're going to be doing lots of video content, online content about the work that you're doing. And all I will say to you from a content person like me to another is that it's enjoyable, especially if you do it in something you love. Like I've been doing I've been full-time sports betting for 15 years, been doing sports and sports betting shows and podcasts for 15 years. I enjoy it every single day. I feel the exact same way today doing it as I did 10, 15 years ago. So with you doing what you're doing in the nutritionist field, and obviously with player agent as well, you're going to enjoy what you're doing. And if content is the route it appears like you're going to take, I'm telling you, if you enjoy what you do, you're going to enjoy it, in my opinion, as well.
I've been working on the content a little bit just as a form of owning a business. You should be doing some form of organic content, and got started the video game in July, the video production game in July of last year, and I'm still honing my craft, and it's fascinating because social media and all of those platforms are a contest for human attention, and you get
Oh,
immediate
no kidding.
feedback.
Instagram, the feed for me is slammed with health and fitness experts and real estate agents. Holy fuck, can't get away from these two groups of employers, apparently, on social media.
Well, then you can actually go in now, the Instagram CEO. See, I'm tracking all this. You can actually go in and manually adjust your algorithm. You say, hey, I want to see more of this and less of this. You can go in and adjust it. But the point is it is a contest for human attention that you get immediate feedback on. And that's where the rare thing is. So many times, for example, take ads or um, newsletters or postcards, all these other forms of seeing if people like it take weeks to determine. Social media in 24 hours, you know if you've got a good video or not, and if you did a good job. And it's a fascinating practice and contest that you get to compete in.
Yeah, no question. It is. It's mind-boggling to think of how social media is developed, I should say, and how it's changed over the years. And now it's just, it seems like who doesn't have, some kind of social media, following these days? Not too many. I applaud the ones that don't, though, because prefer to live in anonymity and just a little
Right. And
privacy.
I think honestly, most business owners would prefer that. I would probably prefer that. I prefer to not be on social media and just have this steady stream of word of mouth clients that came in the door. But that's
But it's
not
a
the
benefit
reality of
to your
my
business, right?
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the reality of my situation. If anyone else is interested, social media is a great way to get a hold of me. I'm on almost every major platform. I even post all my shorts to YouTube as
Yes.
well.
YouTube as
But
well. Yeah.
the company or the coaching company is called Zion Performance, and the website is zion-performance.com. So that's where people could book a call with me if they had some interest following this conversation.
All right. Excellent. Make sure you do. If you need some advice, need some help from our friend here, Zach Zenner, and he'll be happy to deliver that. I think he'd be happy to deliver some opinions and thoughts on the NFL playoffs because that's what we're going to do first. We're going to just have a brief little summary of what we saw. It was just an incredible football weekend this weekend. I mean, if you're a fan or you just enjoy watching good football, I mean, every single game came down to the wire, just about, with the exception of Chargers Patriots, and even that game was close for the majority of it until the Patriots pulled away in the fourth quarter. But Matthew Stafford, your former teammate, and the LA Rams, they got a hell of a battle from the Carolina Panthers, but the Rams were able to survive and get the job done. You know what's amazing about that game, Zach, is it looked like the Rams were just going to run away with it early. I mean, that game was 17-7 at one point. Trevor Etienne muffs the punt for Carolina, hits his helmet, and the Rams get obviously great field position right at that point, and probably a chance to maybe go up 24-7 had they punched in a touchdown. But they were moving the ball at ease. Puka Nacua had 2 touchdowns, 14-0, 17-7, and then they're in Carolina territory. They go for it on fourth down. Sean McVay eschews the field goal attempt. They go for it on fourth down. They don't get it. Carolina gets the ball back with a chance for points right before halftime. And then, of course, they punch it in after that and make it 17-14. But then Matthew Stafford, during that span as well, he hits his helmet on, it hits his throwing hand, his finger on the helmet of a Carolina defender. And at that point, he went through this little patch during the game where I think 2 for 9 or something. Like, all of a sudden, his completion rate went down. He was struggling to make plays down the field in the passing game, and Carolina got more momentum from that. And Carolina had a pretty solid second half, would end up taking the lead. Bryce Young with a tremendous drive to give them the lead with just over 2 minutes left. But there was certainly a lot of time for Matthew Stafford to come back, and that's exactly what he did. And what's impressive to me, Zach, just from watching that, is it did seem like him hitting his finger on the helmet of that player did affect him a little bit. And yet, when it was time to make it happen, money time, game on the
Yeah.
line, touchdown or bust, touchdown or our season is over, He makes it happen. Bing, bang, boom, right down the football field. What a tremendous throw. Not good, tremendous throw as far as ball placement. Pinpoint to Colby Parkinson on that game winning touchdown for the Rams late in the fourth quarter to give them that victory. I feel for Bryce Young, Zach, because I've seen, I try to watch every game as much as possible, and I make sure, so I get a real sense, because we're putting money on this stuff, a real sense of how it went. I watch the condensed replay of every single game every week, so I have a good sense of, which quarterbacks have played well in which games. Bryce Young's had a lot of up and down. I feel for Bryce Young losing that game on Saturday, Zach, because I think that was one of the best games he's played as an NFL quarterback, and he did his job to put his team in a position to win. But the problem is you left Matthew Stafford, future Hall of Famer, already a Super Bowl champion, too much time to come down the field, and come down the field he did to win the game for the Rams. But great game there, Zach. Your thoughts on Rams-Panthers and your old teammate moving on to the divisional round.
Yeah, I'm super happy for Matthew. And Greg Olson was discussing that in the broadcast about how after Matthew had hurt his finger or had hit his finger, that he had been 2 for 9. Well, one of those throws, though, went off the face mask of Puka Nakua. So as much
Dropped
as,
me and almost shot. I almost stopped and just stood at my television, just stared at my television screen in shock. Did he actually drop that? The great Puka Nakua?
Right.
I never see that.
Right. That's super rare, right? And I think that, it certainly might have been affecting him, but I think more so I would give credit to the Panthers defense and switching up some things in coverage to start that second half. And because Matthew still had a couple really nice throws following that injury. And then he came out, of course, and played well. In the second half, the Rams got back to the run game a lot better, handed the ball off more, and got back to attacking the middle of the field. But Panthers defense couldn't do anything on the perimeter. Those corners were shutting their receivers down. So really impressive. It ended up all being middle of the field stuff. So super fun game to watch. And it was a great battle by the Panthers, and kind of something they've done all year long where they just kind of hang around and they hang around. They're not typically in the lead, and they come back and find a way to win, and just fell short this week.
And what's unfortunate too is, they made so many turnovers early in the game for Carolina, and they somehow were right there with a chance to win in spite of those early turnovers. And that, I think, they deserve a lot of credit for that. But how about that? A lot of people didn't think that game was going to be all that competitive, but it was one of the great games this weekend, no doubt, as was Bears and Packers. I got to ask you, as a former Lion, and you still obviously have a soft spot in your heart for the Detroit Lions and always will. You did say you cheer for them still. Which division rival here do you hate more, Bears or Packers, or is it all in the same?
So as a player, I definitely disliked the Packers more.
It's because the Packers were better at the time than the Bears when you were playing for Detroit. Exactly. I totally
correct. But I have a client on the Packers, so I end up cheering for him and the Packers. I really wanted the Packers to win this one because I wanted my client to,
of course,
continue on into the playoffs. So we represent Chris Brooks, number 30. He's their third string or 2B, you could call it.
I get
Jacobs
that thinking, by the way. I want my clients to win the bets I recommend to them, not lose. So I totally get that. We want the clients to succeed. Yes.
Yes, exactly. I wanted them to win. So that was a heck of a game. So it definitely was rooting for the Packers, but it was amazing. And I honestly, as I was watching the first half, I was thinking, this is just like week 17. This is just like week 17, where they were up big. They looked super dominant. It's like, okay, well, but they'll pull it out this time. And then McManus missed that field goal right before half, and he thought, oh man, that might come back to bite him. Well, he makes it, and then they freeze him. They do the quick timeout thing on the Bears sideline. Then he misses around the second try, and that ended up being huge.
And of course, he missed later in the game. Of course, as well. It's not a good night for Brandon McManus. Everybody's culpable in this for Green Bay. For it to happen twice to the same team in the same stadium, Soldier Field, it's almost unfathomable. But everyone shares blame in this. Jordan Love shares some blame in it. The defense shares some blame in it because suddenly they couldn't stop Caleb Williams and the Bears offense late in that game. And the coaching staff has to share the brunt of it because clearly there was some good adjustments, and whatever was said at halftime from Ben Johnson on the Bears staff, it clearly worked. And it's play calling, I think, was kind of shoddy as well. Like all of a sudden, it was a little bit way too conservative for my liking, and it wouldn't be a Packer playoff loss without special teams killing them. Honestly, how many times have we seen special teams just destroy this team over the years, and especially in big games? I still can't get the San Francisco game when Rodgers was still there out of my mind on that very cold night in Lambeau when they get a block punt return for a touchdown. How many times do we have to see special teams ruin things for this Green Bay team? It's unbelievable under LaFleur.
Yeah, well, it was disappointing. And I think the interesting thing, though, I've been thinking about this is what would you have done? There's nothing to adjust to. And when you're the Packers, when you go into halftime, there's what adjustments are we going to make? We should be up 24 to 6 or whatever the score should have been, right? If they make instead you're up 21-6.
Yeah.
It's like we're moving the ball really well. We're shutting them where they're can move the ball down the field on offense, but we're stopping them. They're only getting field goals. Like, well, what do we change? I don't know. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. Well, then the Bears go and have all these adjustments to make. So it's almost those in-game adjustments in the second half that have lacked. But even then, despite everything, you're up
Should
you're
give
up by
Dennis
3.
Allen some flowers, the defensive coordinator, because
Right.
clearly some of the
I
stuff
think
he
so. But
was doing
you're up
worked.
by 3 with 4 minutes left, and you go almost on the whole field. You traveled 43 yards, I think, but they end up calling that timeout, and then they get to delay a game out of the timeout, right? So that's coaching, and that's just general operation, right? That pushes you back 5 yards. That's a big deal in
Is that
Chicago, in this
borderline
football stadium.
inexcusable when that happens? Delay a game out of a timeout? Because I always say it is. You can't have that happen.
I I think so, and honestly, it's one of my bigger pet peeves watching the NFL is when these emergency timeouts. Trevor Lawrence had one or two of them in his game against the Bills as well. I think even Josh Allen had one. It's just I just wish, especially early in the game, right? Like Trevor Lawrence called one on like a 2nd and 10 from his own 15-yard line to avoid a delay game. Like, just let it go, man. So you're gonna need that timeout, and he would have needed it too. They ended up throwing that interception, but anyway, I just get real. That's bothered me. That's one of my new pet peeves watching the NFL is when and you don't know, right? Like, is it who was it, right? Is it someone? There's no injury update from the staff, so the head coach, the play caller, doesn't know what personnel he's going to do, or It's a lack of communication and operational success on the offensive side of the ball. But to be fair, though, a couple times I think even like when Josh Allen did it, um, the defense has pressured that. And I think the same thing with Jordan Love, right? You have the call. He's like, oh, crap, we're screwed here. I need to change things. So that's the defense is forcing those on that level. But yeah, that was disappointing. To finish my point, the Packers have the ball. They're up 3 with 4.5 minutes left. They drive almost down the length of the field. They end up getting backed up, but they only took a minute and a half on the clock and then end up missing that field goal. So I think a couple decisions in there to throw the ball, a couple incompletions, or you think Romeo Dobbs doesn't go out of bounds when he's on the plus 40, right? Not that you're not thinking of that when you're him. He makes that beautiful one-handed catch, but just a lot of things that could have been different.
No doubt. And the delay of game is just mind boggling how that could happen because that pushed the field goal back 5 more yards. That critical field goal that was missed there when Green Bay was leading still at that part of the game. And of course, gave the Chicago Bears the chance after that with better field position. Missing that 44-yard field goal to drive down the field. Caleb Williams finds DJ Moore for that 31-27 touchdown. And the Packers got close, but could not punch it in late and ran out of time. Incomplete, and Chicago a hell of a football game though, and an incredible comeback by the Chicago Bears.
Even on that last drive too, and Jalen Reed drops that crosser that would have been a nice.
Correct.
So
yes.
Then they could have had more significant or meaningful chances later on, right? But he drops that pass, and that was huge.
Yeah, it was, and it's definitely going to be what if for Green Bay. Although now it sounds like, according to Adam Schefter, everyone's calling for Matt LaFleur's head on a spit for Packer fans after that loss. And that's now sounding like they're trying to negotiate a deal to keep him around for at least another year. So
Well,
interesting
I
turn of
think he has
events.
1 year left on his deal, and
Yeah,
this is where our coach would typically get extended. And I think they're ready to see what they're going to do. But I don't know why you fly. I mean, certainly you could come up with reasons why you fire Lafleur, but I think he's continued to grow as a coach. I think you saw that even from a couple of years ago, right? Kicking the field goal in Aaron Rodgers' last year in Green Bay against Tom Brady and the Bucks instead of going for it on fourth down, right? He's now going for it on fourth down, right? He's being more aggressive as a play caller, and I don't know. I don't. I if you're going to fire someone, and I think this in terms of the Ravens as well, and they
yeah,
fired Harbaugh.
yeah.
Is there someone objectively better
Better.
ready to replace him?
And to
You know,
take you
like
to a bit bigger place and to take that next step with that next coach that you hire. Yes.
yeah, is there someone like that? Now, if Mike McDonald, for example, was still on staff in Baltimore, right, then maybe that makes sense. Okay, we're going to fire Harbaugh. We got this stud defensive coordinator. We're going to elevate him to head coach, but he's gone. He's having success in Seattle. Who is going to take his spot? I don't really see an obvious replacement. Of course, they're going to do their due diligence, and maybe they do find him. Maybe they do find the next Matt LaFleur or whatever often or Ben Johnson, right? I don't know who it is, but maybe they find him. But I don't think if you fire LaFleur, there's no one objectively or obviously better than him, unless maybe you say Harbaugh, which would be hilarious.
And a lot of
Just
people are
do
already,
this
speculating that maybe
revolving door.
Harbaugh in the As the World Turns soap opera
And
world
then
of
the
NFL
Ravens would for sure hire LaFleur. They would just trade. That would be
trade spots.
amazing.
Not just to trade Ravens and Packers, yeah. Although they can't happen now because
Oh
you already
man.
fired Harbaugh, but yeah, in Baltimore. But yeah, it wouldn't totally shock me if they trade places, but doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Sounds like Green Bay's going to keep LaFleur around at least for another season or two. All right, Buffalo Jacksonville. This reminds me of the Rams game a lot. Josh Allen actually hits his hand on the helmet of a player during this game, hand injury, and he's getting banged around. Let's be honest. The offensive line took a few sacks. His hard running style that he has, he just refuses to go down on initial contact or ever slides. He never, ever slides, Josh Allen. He invites the contact. He's that kind of a, tough, take no prisoners attitude when he runs the football, and he was getting physically pounded. In addition, obviously, hitting his hand on the helmet of a player, hurting his finger there. So there were questions about Josh's ability to throw it, although, again, just like Matt Stafford, there were times it looked like that hitting the helmet with his hand hurt him and hindered his passing at points during the game. But with the game on the line, just like with Stafford, Josh Allen found a way. Big play to Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks, man, turning back the clock. Outstanding yesterday for the Buffalo Bills. So the people were calling that guy washed up before the Bills picked him up. Bills pick up Brandon Cooks. Yawn-inducing for some people. Yawns. That's all that got for a reaction that they signed Brandon Cooks. Nobody's yawning now. Okay, that was a great fucking performance by Brandon Cooks yesterday. He was absolutely tremendous. Big plays, including the one that set up that game-winning touchdown. What drove me nuts during that game is I don't know if they didn't realize how tough Josh Allen is or if they were that really concerned about his physical well-being. I couldn't take it with Jim and Tony in the booth for CBS. I couldn't anymore. And I like Jim. Jim's great. Jim's an all-time great broadcaster. No one's going to deny that.
Yeah.
And he can do football. He can do golf. He can do basketball, college basketball. He's done it all well. Tony gets on your nerves a little bit. He kind of rambles on and sometimes loses focus. But I couldn't take it with them, with how petrified they sounded about Josh Allen's health. I mean, when he went into the tent, it's like, oh boy, he looks like he can barely. I don't know if it's smart for him to continue there. I'm really worried. This is not good. This is not good. Hey, guys, Jimmy, Tony, listen, guys, he's a tough son of a gun. Okay. Did you see him still throwing that ball pretty well? Yeah. Did you see him still leading the team to victory? Yeah. Let's calm down a little bit with the hysteria about the health of Josh Allen there a little bit. I mean, they made it sound like the guy's on his freaking deathbed, for crying out loud. During that football game yesterday. It was absurd. Just how ridiculously overly concerned and worried and scared they sounded for how Josh Allen was in that game. It was crazy at some points. It's like, I don't know if if they should be. I'm really worried about this. We're going to be able to finish the game. He's Josh Allen, man. He's a tough son of a gun. You're going to have to take him a lot to come out of a football game. I just think it was over the top, just how worried and paranoid the Jim and especially Tony, were with the guys. Tony, Jimmy, he's going to be fine. He was fine. He finished the game. He's a tough SOB. And what a performance by Josh Allen. And again, game on the line. Josh Allen delivers, Zach.
Yeah, it was. You could almost just feel it coming, right? When they had the ball, and it's like, oh, okay, well, we know they're going to go down and score. It was just a matter of if the Jaguars were then going to be able to match and go down and score when they had the ball. I think the concern from the broadcasting booth comes from the concussion protocol that exists in the NFL now to protect the players from themselves. Because you saw in that first goal line touchdown, Josh gets hit in the head. His helmet kind of gets pulled back. It was a head injury, and when you go in the blue tent, sometimes they're not going to let you come back out. Now that there's still, I'm just going to say that
All I got is I
there.
get the concern, Zach, about from that standpoint, but my God, it was just over the top. It was
Oh, yeah,
way
yeah.
too much concern. I mean, they made it sound like Josh Allen's about to die on his hospital bed there. That's how they sounded.
Well, I think the independent neurologist can keep a player out of the game if he deems him unfit to play, if he's not passing concussion tests and that sort of thing. Never forget, I did a concussion test and I'm standing on my cleats on concrete and I lost my balance a little bit. And they're like, "Yeah, you're done. We're keeping you out." And it's just you just don't know. Part of the problem though was when I got up, I started to walk to the wrong sideline after I got hit. That was the real issue. But the point is that the player like Josh might not have a say, and he might be pulled out of the game, which would have been huge. But I think super fun game though. I was very impressed with the Jaguars' ability to stop the run. That was the strength of the Bills. Almost the entire season was James Cook and that rushing attack, and they shut that down and made him earn it. Ended up not being enough. The interceptions, of course, didn't help the turnovers
Yeah.
that the Jaguars
Fourth
had.
down failure inside the 10. Trevor Lawrence dove for the first down. His knee
I
touched
mean, if he
before he
doesn't
got there.
slip, right, he probably makes that, right? He just kind of slips on the turf, and you're asking he's an athletic quarterback, but still, right? That's not something he's necessarily used to, trying to get that tough 3 yards. That was tough. Yeah, that was a turning point for sure.
And I had over 50.5 in that game and cashed it by the half point. Thank you very much, Josh Allen. 51 points. Beautiful thing. Made my day because that was the biggest bet I had on the wild card games yesterday. So that was great to see that. And Buffalo with the comeback win. What a stat line for Josh. 28 of 35. 7 incomplete passes for the entire game. 273 through the air. I am concerned moving forward. I mean, we still saw 67 rushing yards for Travis Etienne. Bashal Tutton, 51 rushing yards for him. So the Buffalo run defense is still the worry going into Denver when they play the Broncos next weekend, AFC divisional weekend. San Francisco, Philly, I'm happy for the 49ers. I got to admit, I kind of was just as a fan, or just a football fan. I'm kind of getting sick of the Eagles. I'm kind of getting sick of Nick Sirianni, too, and the act on the sideline, barking and screaming and yelling at the refs, complaining and bitching about every single call, it seems like, with the refs. And then, of course, now A.J. Brown's no saint, but not a good look when you're barking at A.J. Brown. You're going back and forth with him on the sideline during that game. And so I didn't like that from Sirianni's perspective. And I'm no A.J. Brown fan of some of his antics this year. And at the end of the day, Philadelphia's got a chance to try to win that game late. A.J. Brown with a costly drop on that final drive. Like, if you're going to flap your freaking gums and run your fucking mouth all the time, you better catch the damn ball in a big spot like that. And A.J. Brown was not able to do that. I was just so impressed with the coaching staff of the Niners. Kyle Shanahan, offensive coordinator and head coach. Robert Saleh, left for dead after the abysmal tenure there with the Jets, but now he's back in his sweet spot, I guess you could say, Zach, as a defensive coordinator. And what a job with an undermanned, injury-riddled, depleted Niner defense to step up and play that way. Next man up mentality. It was just great to see everybody rise up and really keep Saquon Barkley under wraps. I thought it was one of the worst, certainly second half performances Jalen Hurts could ever have throwing the football. It was just not very good from the quarterback standpoint in the second half, but you'd have to tip your cap to the Niners defense. It's kind of a bad loss for Philly with just how banged up the Niners were. I mean, roster-wise, if you match up position for position and you grade out the talent and the personnel that was on that field, Niners, Eagles, how do you not give a huge advantage to the Eagles? And for them, especially with all the Niner injuries, and then you
Oh, yeah.
lose that game as favorites on your home field to an injury riddled, depleted Niners team. It's a bad loss for Philly, but I don't want to take all the credit away from San Francisco because Brock Purdy played a hell of a game. Christian McCaffrey, unbelievable job by him the whole game. What a great trick play. Jawan Jennings throwing to Christian McCaffrey for the big touchdown that really put the momentum toward the Niners. It was just a tremendous effort, players and coaches, Zach, by the San Francisco 49ers yesterday to beat the defending champs.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think when I recall when they were doing the defensive intros for the 49ers, they're going through the defensive line, and there's not a household name on that defensive line. Certainly good and talented players, but you think, oh well, this is then to your point, the Eagles' strength should be, or you're holding up paper to paper. The Eagles, are by far superior on paper.
They've lacked
It
pass
didn't
rush
show up
most
that
of
way.
the season with these injuries. Like they're one of the bottom teams in the NFL, Zach. I would say the last month or so, San Francisco in quarterback pressure rate, and still Philly couldn't overcome it.
I know, and it's been an issue though for the Eagles offense all year. I had the unfortunate decision to put Saquon Barkley on my fantasy team. I drafted him this year, and certainly he had a decent fantasy year. But because of that, I was keeping up with their rushing attack. And if you take away, a couple of Saquon, he had a home run every third week or so. But if you take away his home run shots and explosive runs, they were not moving the ball. They haven't been moving the ball well on the ground for the majority of the season. And that showed up again. And that was the strength of the Eagles team last year was you give it to Saquon, he's going to get 3-4 yards, maybe even 8 yards a crack at it. And then they're going to get ahead. They're going to control the clock with these long drives, get ahead. And then this pass rush defense is going to be able to pin their ears back and you're going to have a tough day. That's how they won their games last year. Well, this year you don't have the run game. You don't have that ball control that you had the year prior. And it's going to be put up more on Jalen Hurts and the passing attack. And they just weren't able to get it done really through most of the year.
No,
To be fair, though, too, their defense in general is still played very well. And that's kind of what's been winning them games. Just wasn't enough against the 49ers.
they did, although again the trick play burns them. The first drive, and although Shanahan with the scripted first offensive possessions and first drives,
Yeah.
it's always been good. So maybe you give the Philly defense a little bit of a pass for allowing that opening drive touchdown. Shanahan's usually good in those situations. How many times have we seen a great scripted first drive pay off in a touchdown for the San Francisco 49ers over the years? But they could have played better. Obviously, the big moments in the game, the Eagles couldn't get. They still played pretty well. It was more, this is more of an offensive failure for the Philadelphia Eagles here. That Barkley again couldn't really get much going. That Jalen Hurts played a horrific second half, horrific against a team that obviously lacks pass rush and has so many injuries on the defensive side of the football. So that's a tough way to go out for Philly. But great job by San Fran. They get another crack at Seattle next week, Zach. They lost 13-3, couldn't get anything going on offense in that season finale, which cost them the number one seed. But now they get a chance at redemption next week. And the last game, obviously we're recording this Monday before Houston-Pittsburgh, but which hasn't happened yet. But Chargers-Patriots, I know 0-3, and I was a little harsh on Twitter about Herbert saying, he's just got to be better. I still think he does have to be better. I know the O-line's compromised, injuries galore, I get it. But there were moments that there was a clean pocket and plays to be made, and he couldn't make them. And I think we were talking just before we started recording that you felt it was a lot of coverage sacks. Nobody was getting open down the field. Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, Lad McConkey, didn't matter. Nobody was separating down the field against that New England Patriots secondary. And when nobody's getting open, it's hard to be able to make plays, and it's hard to avoid those sacks, especially with an offensive line kind of in shambles. And the Chargers just a beating that Justin Herbert took most of that night. And give Drake May credit. He had to battle. He wasn't perfect. He made some mistakes. He turned it over a couple of times, sack fumbles, interception, albeit on a tip ball. But boy, that drop in the bucket throw to put the game away to Hunter Henry for that touchdown. That was a dime dropped it right in the bucket for him. It was an incredible throw. Drake May's going to have a hell of a career, and what a job by him to get that first win in the playoffs in his first playoff start.
Yeah, it was fun to see that for the Patriots, such a storied franchise. They hadn't made the playoffs in 7 years, I think it was. I mean, that 7 years went by quick. I still, maybe just because I grew up with them, am envisioning the Patriots of old, but
Oh,
it's been
Brady
a
and the
while since
Patriots
they've
were
had
still
success.
rolling when you were playing for Detroit. That's probably a part of it. You still have those memories.
Yeah,
Wow,
that's
Patriots
kind
in
of
the
what
Brady
I'm
Belichick
picturing.
era. Yep.
100%, right? But then you think, oh, well, Brady played, and then he went down to Tampa, and the Patriots didn't make the playoffs those years, right? So it's been a long time for the Patriots. At the same time, I was also rooting for Justin Herbert. I mean, it's such a successful quarterback, seems like such a stand-up person as well. You want to see him have success, and I to reiterate what I said before and what you hinted at, I think a lot of it was coverage. Even times where he did moments and plays where he did halftime and he wasn't running for his life. He's kind of pumping. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like the look, and that's the defense. That's either the offense not getting open or not separating, or it's the defense either confusing with coverage or having excellent schemes that are confusing Justin, taking away the read or who he's looking at first. But I think that was a big problem. And then part of it too is when you're running for your life half the time, the plays you do have a clean pocket, you're kind of hearing the dogs bark, the ghosts, right? And that's you can understand it, right? Because he was getting crushed back there a few times.
He was. You got to give New England's defense credit, but again, you also have to give some of the blame to Herbert and the O line and the receivers for not getting open. It was a collective, horrendous night for the Chargers offense, and I think probably everybody shares a little bit of blame in that. But give New England credit. Now the thing is, New England was facing. I still don't know, Zach, how great the Patriot defense is because a lot of their numbers declined late in the year. They faced a historically weak strength of schedule, truly one of the weakest strength of schedules in recent memory. And I've talked to a lot of NFL bettors and handicappers. They say the same thing. This was truly one of the weakest schedules in the regular season that a team has had, that New England feasted on. But at the same point in time, I don't know how much tested they're going to be because we're going to talk Houston-Pittsburgh now, Monday Night Football, how much they're going to be tested defensively by either of the teams they're going to face next week, Houston or Pittsburgh, because I think there's probably flaws on offense for both of those teams right now. It could be until the AFC Championship game if New England gets there when they face maybe a Josh Allen down the road or in Buffalo and really test, just truly how great that defense is. But that remains to be seen. All right, Monday Night Football, because we're recording this the day of Houston-Pittsburgh, the last wild card game. Houston rather, 3-point road favorites, 38 the total. I do like over 38 points in that game just because I think both teams can get to 20. Rodgers found something last week against Baltimore. I've never seen him look better in a second half and especially a fourth quarter than that. Look like the old Rodgers. He's slinging it left and right, and he's not doing it with freaking, great receivers like back in the day. There's not those old great Green Bay receivers that he had to work with back in the day. He's throwing to Calvin Austin last week. He's throwing to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's bounced around from one team to the next over the years. He didn't have DK Metcalf, the one true blue deep threat that the Pittsburgh Steelers have at receiver, and he was still making it happen. Freiermuth, the tight end. It was just incredible to watch. It looked like the old Rodgers in vintage form last week against Baltimore in the fourth quarter. Can he replicate that against this great Houston defense? I expressed my concern to you before the show. Houston's defense is great, but why were they letting the Raiders go up and down the field against them later in the season? Why was Riley Leonard last week for the Colts, especially early in that game when the starters were in for Houston? Why was he slicing them? Why was he just throwing and moving the ball up and down that whole first half pretty much against that Houston defense? So it does have me a little concerned that maybe they're not playing at their absolute best form going into this game, just as Aaron Rodgers starting to gain some confidence. On the flip side, Zach, with the Houston offense, the O-line's the concern, but C.J. Stroud does have a healthy Nico Collins, and that's always made a difference for the Texans. When he's on the field, C.J. Stroud's just a better quarterback. That's by far his favorite receiver in the passing game. And I still say this about the Steeler defense. There's times it looks good, and then there's times it's a disaster. And let's not forget last week there were some disastrous moments, Zach. They let Zay Flowers twice get behind that entire secondary. And I said this
Yeah.
on the Football Frenzy show that I last week, previewing these wild card games with Philip Nelson. I said it there that I think if you take care of TJ Watt, you block him, and Cam Hayward, you take care of those two guys on that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. That's not a great defense outside of those two guys, because I don't think Jalen Ramsey's the Pro Bowl corner he used to be. You can beat him now. And I just am not enamored with a lot of the other players at the different positions on that side of the ball, other than Watt, other than Hayward, who are definitely going to the Hall of Fame when their careers are over. I think if you take care of those two guys on that Pittsburgh Steeler D, you can move the ball against them. But Zach, what do you think here? How does this game play out in your mind, Texans and Steelers?
Yeah, this was going to be interesting. I could see this game being like 3-3 at halftime, right? One of those, we're
It's
like,
possible. I'll say that.
you
Yes.
know, we're like, no. And I know you got the 38 points there, but I mean, it's just, I could see it going that way. What I love though is that DK Metcalf is back. I mean, that has been so huge.
At
You
least you can
saw them,
stretch the
the
field a bit
Steelers.
more, correct? Yeah.
I mean, you saw the Steelers kind of hit their stride, right? They with DK on the field against the Ravens. So it's week 14. So the month of December, really. So you went Baltimore, Miami, Detroit with DK Metcalf. The Ravens really found their stride. That first game at Baltimore, Aaron Rodgers started to hit those downfield passing attacks with DK. Then he's out their last 2 weeks, right? At Cleveland, they struggle mightily on offense. And then even against Baltimore, they had their challenges on offense. They ended up pulling it out and scoring enough points. Part of that was helped by a turnover Lamar had right on their own side of the field with that batted pass. But I think with DK Metcalf, their offense could find a way to get it done against the Texans, and then it's just a matter of Houston can continue to move the ball themselves. That's what I'd be, if I were to pick someone, right, I would probably pick the Steelers because I think that their offense has a better chance of having success despite all the concerns you mentioned about the Steelers defense. I still think the Houston offense has struggled quite a bit this year, and that the Steelers offense has a better chance against Houston's defense than Houston's offense has against less maybe a lesser talented, not the most talented Steelers defense we've seen.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's an interesting matchup because I think you can say there's questions about. I think there's more questions about the Pittsburgh defense for sure than there is the Houston defense. Even though the Houston
Oh yeah,
defense, had some cracks in the armor a couple of these games against lesser teams and quarterbacks. Like I'm bothered by the Raider performance. I'm bothered by Riley Leonard. First time he's ever seen the field as a starter. Just doing what he did against them last week. But they're still a good unit, really good unit. Maybe they're dialed in, they're locked in now that it's the playoffs, and they look like that dominant unit they are capable of. But then, of course, on the other side, the Houston offense, that O line holding up. I always say if you take care of TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, Houston's offense will be fine and they'll move the ball. But that's a big if. Can that O
yeah,
line hold up against
right.
TJ
Well,
Watt?
something else to consider too. Something else to consider, particularly when you think about the Ravens. The Ravens in general, especially in that first game against the Steelers, and again in this last game, they've not always done a good job pressuring the quarterback this year. Getting pressure on the quarterback was a challenge for the Ravens defense. Now, I don't know
Houston
if you
can
was
with Will
starting at left.
Anderson leading the way. Correct. Yeah.
Well, but I think at left tackle it was Dylan Cook, someone who hasn't played a lot. Certainly a talented guy who's been in the league for 3 years. But if he's starting again, this is going to be probably the most talented front that he's gone against, and it is not going to be that Ravens pass rush. It's going to be that tear your head off Houston pass rush where their starters leave the field and another darn near Pro Bowler comes on to rush the passer.
And Daniil Hunter, let's not forget him too on this Houston Texans team. Great pass rusher for a large part of his NFL career. So blocking them going to be paramount here for the Steelers offense because it's also not the fleet of foot. Aaron Rodgers in the prime of his career, he could run it when he had to. He's a lot less likely to do that now at this
He
stage
turned
of
back
his
the
career.
clock though. If you alluded
Yep,
to it, he turned back the clock a little bit this last week, and
he did.
that'll be the big thing. Is if
Yep.
especially that's what I like with DK. If he can escape, that's gonna be bad for the Texans, right? Just in general, Aaron Rodgers has always been so dangerous, drifting to his left, flicking that thing 60 yards and hitting someone on the sideline.
Yeah, no doubt. That'll be a fun game to watch tonight. All right, we'll wrap this show up in about 5 minutes. Just before we wrap it up, just some brief thoughts just to you, Zach, on the divisional round. We got three of the games confirmed. We have Buffalo, Denver. We'll start there because I think that might be the first game of the weekend next weekend on Saturday. But Buffalo, Denver, remember, this is a rematch. Buffalo beat Denver in the wild card round last year and beat them pretty soundly. And Bo Nix struggled in Buffalo. But now he's in another year of experience. Now the game's in Denver instead. But what do you think there, Bills Broncos?
Man, I think I have to go with Josh Allen, partly just because I would be rooting for Josh to go to the Super Bowl, right? I want Josh Allen to have success. He finally Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are finally, and Joe Burrow, those three, they're finally out of the playing field, right? He's certainly going to have his challenges, but you've seen him fall to those great players and those great teams in the past. I gotta just want him to win. Um, the interesting thing though will
Is
be
Sean Payton
the
disciplined enough to stick with the run, start to finish?
yeah, right,
Sometimes he
because
gets a little too infatuated with Bo Nix bootlegs and Bo Nix throws, and sometimes he forgets here, to run the football. Sometimes, not all the time, but I've seen
yeah,
games where it's like, where's the run game gone? Well, now you're taking on
yeah.
a run defense that's got significant concerns, and it's been a problem for the Bills all year. Do you have the discipline to stick to it, start to finish for 4 quarters, run that football if you're the Broncos and you're Peyton?
I think that's what's interesting about this matchup is I think the Broncos actually match up really well against this year's Bills because they have a really extremely strong defense, and they haven't necessarily been when they can run the ball, they've done really well and won their games. And then they're playing a run defense that has not performed well typically. So I think they actually match up really well. So I think it's going to be a real tough battle out in Denver for the Bills, but I do hope they pull it out.
That's going to be a good one. And again, I like the fact that it's a rematch of a playoff game last year. That is going to be fun to watch. Right now, it's Buffalo, a 1.5 point road favorite, 46.5 the total in that Buffalo Denver game. All right, San Francisco, Seattle on the NFC side. That's going to be the NFC game on Saturday. Seattle, 7.5 point favorites at home, 45.5 the total. It was 13-3 Seattle to decide the number one seed in the NFC and the NFC West division on that final week of the regular season. Seattle's defense completely shut down Brock Purdy and the San Francisco offense, and the Seattle offense against a banged up San Francisco defense, but a San Francisco defense that obviously played well in beating Philly despite all the injuries. Was able to get the job done. It sucks for George Kittle, man. That's terrible to see that. The Achilles out for the rest of the playoffs and the season. Although I will say this, people saying, well, there goes the tight end position. Don't sleep on Jake Tonjes. Every time I see that guy get in there as a replacement to Kittle, I see him playing okay, making some things happen. But the bottom
I
line,
feel like the
Zach, for this
49ers,
game,
yeah.
yeah, San
I was just gonna
Francisco's
say,
got
I
to
feel
have
like the
more success, yeah, offensively to win.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I feel like the 49ers are famous though for someone like a Kittle going down and then someone you've never heard of on offense going in and just have crushing it. Brock Purdy being the absolute shining example, right? It's like, wow, he's going to come in and just absolutely play amazing and someone you'd never expected to play well. So they do a great job with their personnel and that next man up. But George Kittle's an all pro player. And I have a hard time believing that the 49ers defense is going to be able to hold up against the Seahawks offense in the way that they did in the last week of the season and the way they did this last week. You just got to think that the Seahawks and their high-powered offense are
And a
going to be
great
able to,
defense, and an absolutely
yeah,
tremendous defense, Seattle, 100%. And they shut
yeah. I
down the
think it's going to
Niners
be tough,
last
tough for the
time.
Niners.
Yeah, yeah. They shut him down the last time. Will they be able to here is the question. The problem is, I think Seattle grades out as a better team, I would say, and certainly on the much better defense, healthier defense, although San Francisco's gutted it out the last couple of weeks, especially last week. But it comes down to Darnold, right? Do we trust Sam Darnold in the playoffs? And what's his playoff record? I'm pretty sure he hasn't won a playoff game yet. So that's something that, uh, sometimes it is that. Is Sam Darnold ready to take that step, Zach? What do you see when you see him play?
I think the biggest thing, as always, and the reason I like the Seahawks and that I think he does take this big next step is because, to your point, the lack of pass rush. The biggest thing for Sam has always been if he starts hearing ghosts or that pressure starts getting to him. not that he can't stand in there and take it, but it just seems to compile from a mental standpoint, and then he doesn't play as well. So if you can keep him clean and upright, whether that might be by moving the pocket or just playing protection, I think he does take that big next step and win his first playoff game.
There's a little Herbert, the mental block that he's got to overcome, like Herbert, and Herbert still hasn't done that. He's now 0-3, and now Darnold's got it. Because let's be honest, let's call it like we see it. Last year for Minnesota, that was a rough wild card game performance from him against Matthew
Had lost
Stafford and the
Christian,
Rams.
I believe they had lost Christian Darrisaw, right? They had lost 2 or 3 starting O linemen on that Vikings
Shocker.
team.
I keep seeing that guy on the injury list all year, Darrisaw,
Well,
injured list. Yeah.
well, people think that, last year was the ACL, so they'd lost their stud left tackle. I think they had also lost Brian O'Neill. That played a huge role. And I think a lot of people assume that these athletes are just going to come back from these injuries, but I expect Darrisaw to have a long, fruitful career, but you don't always just come back like you want to come back. And I think we saw that with all the up and down the injury report this season.
Yeah, and speaking of those two guys, again, they were on and off the injury report this year for the Minnesota Vikings. Key components of that O line for them: Darrisaw and O'Neill. Okay, the third game for divisional weekend that we have as confirmed is the Rams and the Bears. I want to bet this thing over, but I'm worried. I already see cold, and I'm seeing maybe snow showers and maybe even some wind at Soldier Field for this game on Sunday. But I think there's points. I mean, the total is indicative of that. 50.5, 51. Rams 3.5, 4-point road favorites in this game. I was on that Ram Panther over 45, easily hit that one. As far as this game goes, though, with Rams and Bears, can you trust the Rams to win by margin right now? I mean, we're seeing it repeatedly. I don't love what I'm seeing out of the defense right now, Zach. I mean, this is every week teams are moving the ball with some degree of success and scoring points against this Rams defense. Now, the offense is tremendous, and Matt Stafford and the Rams seem to churn out 30 points plus every week lately, regardless of opponent. And by the way, that's 7-0 to the over for the Rams in their last 7 games, 7 straight overs in Rams games entering this playoff game. And it speaks to what I was talking about, Zach. The offense is excellent, and the defense has had some holes in it lately. And when you're talking about a Bears offense and a coach like Ben Johnson, that the defensive issues could be a problem. And I always say, with a leaky defense, do I want to trust you as a favorite, laying more than a field goal? I'm not so sure. Chicago can move the ball against this Rams team. Chicago's defense against the Rams offense, I can't explain. It's obviously adjustments, but how do you go from playing an all-out horrible first half on defense if you're Chicago against Green Bay, and then pretty much almost shutting them down completely in the second half? It's pretty crazy to see that switch. But what do you think, Zach, for Rams and Bears?
Very much rooting for Matthew. I think, to your point too, the second half adjustments from Dennis Allen have been fantastic. Not even just this last week, but 2 weeks prior to that when he played the Packers. That it was almost the exact same game where they ran up and down the field, and then the second half came out and the Packers hardly did anything on offense. So I think I'm rooting for the Rams. What concerns me is the special teams for the Rams. Concerns me that they had the blocked punt last week, right? The Panthers blocked a punt. Panthers blocked a punt. They clearly do not trust their kicking game, and they shouldn't with all the misses that they've had within NFL makeable ranges. There's a reason they're going for it on 4th and 2 from the 30-yard line at Carolina.
Kicker, they're calling him what? Mevis, the guy that they're using right now. The Rams.
It's their 5th one of the season, right? And it's just, hey, whoever can put a string of kicks together and stay hot stays on the team. But it's just. It's a team, and they haven't always.
He was Missouri's kicker in
McVay's
college. Harrison Mevis.
The thing is, they fired Chase Blackburn, but the issue I don't think has ever been the special teams coach. I think from an organizational standpoint, Sean McVay's even come out and said it. He's like, I just want the ball. I want special teams out of the game entirely. After the offense has their turn, I want my turn. Right. And I think
I want your special teams out of the game. That's for sure. They're not so special.
I mean, that's. To my point, right? I think that philosophy has a trickle down effect just on the organization, and they not necessarily put a lot of stock into keeping or maintaining high quality special teams players. That's not been a factor, and you even see it. They have, I think, Nate Landman, if I'm not mistaken, their starting captain linebacker is still playing on special teams, and I think, and you see that, right? You certainly see starting linebackers playing on teams, but I
Nate
just think
Landman,
that
not to be concerned with the Billy Bob Thornton show of the same name. Yeah.
but I think that's my concern in this game is the special teams, especially when you have the Bears with Duvernay and their excellent returner. You saw that against the Packers. You saw that against the Vikings. That's the only reason they beat the Vikings was Duvernay had a 50-yard kick return to get the Bears darn near in field goal range at the end of that game at Minnesota. So that's my concern there. But if they can take care of it on a special team standpoint, I think the Rams will win.
The Chicago offensive line deserves a lot of praise. This was one of the worst units, position groups in the NFL last year, the Bears offensive line, 2 years ago as well. To see what Ben Johnson has done to transform that unit from not just one of the worst in the NFL to above average to actually pretty good now. There's probably a few better offensive lines, but still, they're so much better than they've been in the last 2 seasons along that offensive line. It's really wonders what he's done, Ben
Well,
Johnson. With that
also
group.
Ryan Poles and his investment, right? They went out and got Joe Tooney, right? And
Yep.
there is a little bit of concern though. You saw Ozzie Trapullo go down, their starting left tackle, so hopefully he
Yes.
can come back healthy for this week. That'll be huge because the Rams and their pass rush, that's what they're known for, and that's the biggest thing, right? It works hand in hand. It reminds me of the Eagles last year, where the Rams get ahead, the Rams defense then pins their ears back. They get to rush the passer. The other team has to pass the ball more, and they get to do all their sack dances, right? But if you can stay, I think getting behind against the Rams in the first half is a lot more concerning than getting behind against the Packers was last week.
And speaking of the concerns, Zach, that I have about the Rams defense, you mentioned a key offensive lineman going down for Chicago. How about the fact that Carolina lost Ike Mekwanu, the left tackle,
Yes,
in that
yes.
game early, and yet here are the Panthers marching the ball still for a
Yep.
majority of that game against the Rams defense. So that's why I'm concerned. I mean, the team lost their left tackle early in that game, and Carolina's still moving it on you. Bryce Young's still moving the ball on you. It's
That was
worrisome.
the biggest difference between the first half and the second half in that game was the Rams pass rush was bothering Bryce Young the whole first half. In the second half, they were able to protect him, and then finally at the end of the game, the pass rush started to heat up again. But no, to your point, right? It's almost a not a legendary thing, but a very good pass rush really disappeared for half of that Panthers game. So we'll see if the Bears can do that same thing.
Great analysis. Before we wrap things up with Zach, he's done an absolutely outstanding job. This has been a hell of a great fun show with him. You don't follow the college ranks as much, but any thought you have to Indiana versus Miami national championship game coming up next Monday?
In a way, this reminds me of the FCS playoffs. And for those that watch that FCS national championship game between Illinois State and Montana State, you witnessed a treat. But Illinois State was unranked and traveled all the way up the ranks. It would continue to win and win and win, and then end up going to play the number one seed in Montana State and gave them a heck of a fight. When it really ended up losing because their holder couldn't catch a kick for a field goal. It really reminds me, it's a similar path, right? You have Miami, who many thought shouldn't have even been in the playoff, against the number one seed, the Titans of the college football this season, the Fernando Mendoza and Kurt Cignetti's Hoosiers. I mean, I'm certainly cheering for Indiana and the Hoosiers. Just a historically terrible college football team and organization, and so happy for him. And then I'm a big Jesus guy, and their leader Fernando is a big time Christian and expressing his faith. So
He will
certainly
always
cheering for
mention the glory of God helping me out. Absolutely,
him.
100%. And what a great guy as far as speaking, though. Unbelievable speaking and charisma from him. He's going
Yeah,
to be
I
a
mean, just
broadcaster if he wants to, long
well,
in the future with the
yeah, someone
football
made
team.
that point. They're like, they have him at the table after his semifinal game. It's like, does he work for ESPN, or is he a player? Right? He just fits so well, and he can speak so well and
Yeah.
has such passion and, like you said, glorify God. So I'm certainly cheering for Indiana. And to be honest, I think they're going to take it. I mean, the Canes have done a really nice job and maximized everything they've got, but I think they're running into a buzzsaw here with the Hoosiers.
Yeah, I kind of feel that same way. I do. I think Miami can be competitive because they are good in the trenches, especially that defensive line. But I worry now, Carson Beck. He's avoided mistakes for the most part. Indiana's forced everybody into mistakes, in these playoffs, including Dante Moore of Oregon and that blowout over the Oregon Ducks. And maybe if Carson Beck, they might be able to. And I don't want to fade Kurt Cignetti at this point. I have made the case on Twitter, Zach, that Kurt Cignetti's the work he has done here in 2 seasons at Indiana. It's not just one of the greatest, maybe the greatest college football coaching job and program turnaround in history. I think it's one of the great sports coaching jobs and turnarounds in history in all sports, pro or college, what he has done. This was a disaster program. This was a place where you would go to, lose football games and lose, 14 games or 10 or 11, 12 games a year. That's how bad Indiana's been through the course of my 40 years living. That's how awful they've been. And for him to go from that to in 2 years have them in a college football playoff and now have them in a national championship game in year 2. And the crazy part is he's doing this with a lot of the players he brought in from James Madison when he went from JMU to Indiana.
Oh, it's about 50, about a dozen.
When he gets those 5 stars in here.
Better half than a dozen, right, from James Madison are still on that team and doing well. And he did it last year. And honestly, what he's done is he's ruined so many college football coaches' chances, right? Oh, you want a runway to success? Well, Kurt Cignetti took us to the CFP National Championship in 2 years. You've got 2 years to figure this out, new coach, because Kurt Cignetti did it at Indiana. And no one should have been able to do it.
Even quicker trigger pulls with coaching firings now because
that's my point. He has ruined the careers of so many coaches who can't do a turnaround like he did.
Yeah, that is. I mean, that, like I say, you think they're already firing coaches too soon in college football. Everyone's going to get a glance at what Cignetti's done at Indiana, and they're going to say, "Holy shit, you're on the clock, man. You got a couple of years to turn this shit around, or you're out of here. Or we're sending you packing." I mean, Mike.
Yeah, which is a total sidebar, but just because I represent athletes, I do have to mention it, right? And at least now athletes can follow their coaches that are getting fired like that and travel with them. While as before, sure, the coach could move and get bumped up or change or whatever, but the athlete was stuck behind having to deal with a new coach that maybe didn't want it there.
No doubt. Sounds like Lane Kiffin's landed Sam Levitt, by the way, the former Arizona State quarterback. Sounds like he is committed to LSU. Doesn't surprise me because I know he's been courting him with dinner and drinks, and like it's like trying to it's like trying to get with someone. That's kind of Lane Kiffin here with Sam Levitt, trying to wine and dine him here the last few days, and it sounds like it succeeded for Lane because it looks like Sam Levitt is on his way to LSU. We're on our way to wrapping up the show. It's been great. It's been absolutely tremendous. Zach, this has been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it as well. That's the thing with when I host and I bring the guests on. It's just shoot the shit. It's like you're in a bar. It's like you're in a pub and you're just talking ball. And it's great. Try to make it an entertaining, kind of show, kind of vibe to it. But appreciate you joining us. Before we say goodbye, though, tell us everywhere people can follow you and once more about all that you're doing.
Yeah, so track me on pretty much any major social media platform. Give me a follow, shoot me a message, a direct message on any of those platforms. I'll get it answered. You can also reach out to me or learn more about me at zion-performance.com. That's going to be the health coaching stuff, the nutrition, the one-on-one coaching. The agency that I work with is One West Sports Group. So that's where One West Sports Agency, that's where you'd find all agency information. But you can just reach out to my personal stuff about agent business as well. Happy to help people in the portal, represent people in the NFL, and help anyone get more energy for their life, family, feel better.
All right, great stuff. On that note, tremendous show. Thanks for joining us, Zach. We hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure you hit the like button watching on YouTube. We appreciate it. We'll be back later in the week with our regular editions of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. We'll bring on former college and pro quarterback Philip Nelson again. Rob Vina will join us, and we'll have a bunch of great shows for you for the rest of the NFL playoffs. Thanks for tuning in. For Zach Zenner, I'm Ian Cameron, and thanks for tuning in to this special edition, this bonus edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.